I'm super excited to be here with Dustin Talley today. I've known Dustin for years. We've partnered, we've competed, and we've become great friends in the industry. Talking with Dustin, he's very innovative in the space. And in our conversations, Dustin, we've been talking about direct sourcing, but you've really been talking about direct to talent programs. What do you mean by that? And what's the difference?
Yeah, so direct sourcing obviously is a buzzword in the industry, and you're right, we have been talking about it for a long time. And direct to talent and direct sourcing are different, but they're also the same. So with direct to talent, I'm taking that phrase largely from direct to consumer, right, which we've seen play out over the last 20 years in retail and how we go purchase things. And a lot of that's happening within the space as more and more talent are going independent, or let's just say going contract. They're a part of the extended workforce, and now they're able to be engaged more directly. The layer of the staffing firm plays within that transaction has started to change. And so companies can now arguably go build talent pools, direct sourcing, and create an inventory of talent that they can reach out to first. You can do freelance management. So if you have talent you work with on a regular basis, now you're building an inventory of that talent. They're essentially on-demand gig workers ready to go for that specific client. And then things are also being digitized, right? You see a lot of this happening in the staffing space, and this is predominantly focused on the experience for both end users. When I say end users, I'm actually talking about the manager and the talent. A lot of the solutions we have today were built around the supply base, unfortunately. And so as we start to digitize that experience, you see things like digital marketplaces. So with digital marketplaces, that's more of like a public talent pool, whereas direct sourcing would be more of a private talent pool. Freelance management, similarly, a private talent pool where you can go access that inventory.
100% agree. We've put lots of layers between talent and the hiring manager, or talent and the jobs. Getting back to our roots and saying, how do we reduce some of these obstacles and bring the talent closer to the jobs and create a better experience? In looking at direct sourcing or a direct to talent program, is like if you were starting today, what makes up a direct sourcing or a direct to talent program? How do you start?
Starting, like anything, starts with your stakeholders. That's obviously goes without saying, but strong stakeholders involved in the process. Oftentimes, when you've got HR and procurement working together, right, more of a talent acquisition play, and the extended workforce is seen as strategic to what the organization is doing, you've kind of got that foundation for success. But assuming you have that already, you have stakeholders bought into this, and this is something the company is all in on. The next thing is building that inventory of talent. There's a couple of directions companies take with this. Some is like that big bang approach, and they say, we're going to just start inviting the world, right? We want to get them all in here, know that, contract jobs are open at whatever the company is, right? The other is to start building an inventory of known talent. And so we've heard this before, but really starting to figure out where those pockets of talent are in your organization that already are working on repeat assignments, and now building a model around them so that as you bring new workers into the organization, they're brought into that experience. I'm seeing a lot of companies rather build more of a database, not a talent pool. And there's some key differences. A database looks a lot like what staffing companies had years ago, right? And they go tap that database. Maybe they start there to see if the talent exists already. Largely what happens though is they go to market to find the talent. And so I'm seeing that happen a lot with these database plays. You're really just shifting the ownership from a staffing company to an internal resource who's now filling that position. The primary difference in that direct sourcing model, where really you're just sourcing for yourself versus building an actual talent pool where you've invited talent in who are truly looking for projects with your organization, is a mix of talent that are currently looking for roles, as well as those that are kind of like going to be your long-term contractors, right? They're going to stay around, they're going to move around the organization. And this, hey, you're a project manager in the IT department. Could we put you to work in another project management role in marketing now, or in, for sales even, right? The other thing would be, instead of going big bang approach and just doing this across your entire contingent labor program, Picking a few key categories. Oftentimes I tell organizations to start with those that actually have the highest volume. And this is contradictory though, because what most organizations don't actually struggle with are high volume recs. They have multiple suppliers that can fill that. So why in the world would you go change that and now direct source a population that you're filling just fine today? However, that does create the most homogeneous population that you can start to repopulate.
Building a talent pool, though, that of engaged workers is more important, so that it's not reactionary and you're not spending a lot of time searching. There's just a lot of cost and it's inefficient. It's building an engaged talent pool that's ready, available. You're in touch with them. What you mentioned is the redeployment, right? Back in the day in staffing, the best way to continue your revenue stream was to ensure that that person was re-engaged within the existing client base, as opposed to having to find them another job or etc. So knowing when their engagements are up is very important. So I guess that would be a criteria when you're looking at a tool to utilize. Right. Understand when these engagements are up, and then hopefully retain them within your organization by redeploy them on a new engagement.
Yeah, not only the availability, as you mentioned it, so knowing when a project is up or ending or about to end so that you can serve up the next, but also utilization. So if a resource is only working 20 hours in one department, there shouldn't be anything from stopping you from re-engaging them in another department for 20 hours. As things get more fractional, and they will, now these resources are available in fractions or in increments of time. And I think organizations need to embrace that, right? How can I put this person to work for 15 hours this week and take advantage of what they have to offer from my organization? But now that they're working 15 hours, how do I take another 10 or 15 and plug them into another department? And so tools that can help effectively manage that and showcase who's available and who's utilized and who's not, those will be strong tools for managing populations like that.
Because you're talking more in broadly in almost the knowledge and remote work, but we're starting to see that in light industrial, where it's almost like shift scheduling
100%.
Software that's built in, where basically the talent pool is sent out and said, here's the 10 gigs and shifts we have, pick what works for you. And so 100%. You see that happening in the knowledge arenas too, right? Because as you look at the gig economy, a lot of the resources are the remote workers that may have a full-time job and are like moonlighting, let's call it, on some gig economy work because they got extra hours or more and are interested in earning more, and they're looking to become more self-employed down the road. And if they can patch a bunch of gigs, smaller gigs together, that replaces their full-time salary. So, but what are the main components of a direct-to-talent solution? Is it just pick a technology solution, or are there other components? And a buzzword that sounds is really out there today is curation, which really, in my mind, is very talent acquisition oriented, right?
I think far too often organizations actually just go buy the next tool or solution or service and then bolt it into what they have, versus taking the time to figure out what processes they actually want. So I think process is actually the foundation for all of this, figuring out how this is going to work within the tech stack or the service provider stack you already have. Far too often, these, we'll call them buyers for now, clients, right? They get sold on a solution by the salesperson, right? Because there's some really good salespeople in our industry, right? Kudos to all of you out there. Yes, there are some ingredients. So oftentimes you're going to encounter a program that has a VMS, and then they'll either have an internally managed program or an MSP-led program. And just starting there, you're going to want to find solutions that are well equipped to work with those partners and those systems. So starting your process around understanding who's already integrated, what providers do you work with, and trying to build that around kind of like a partnership strategy where your partners are going to play well together. So it's kind of taking an inventory of what you have, building the desired state process, and then from there going out and finding the partners that make sense for you versus being sold on any one solution.